Elise, this event isn't for people who think money makes them better than family. My mother said it from the middle of a chartered yacht on Lake Pleasant, in front of 32 people from my family and my mother's old circle, while raising a glass of wine beneath a banner with her name on it. For more than a decade, she had told every neighbor, every church friend, every Carter cousin that I scrubbed motel toilets for a living. She said it at Thanksgiving. She said it the year my name went up on a Forbes list. She said it again last month at the salon. She never asked what Brightline actually was. She never asked who paid off my father's collapsed construction debt this past February. She never asked whose name was on the deed of the house she'd been living in for almost 8 years. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I set a gray folder on the bar and waited for her to look down. If this story is already making your chest tighten, please take a second to like and subscribe. It tells YouTube to push stories like this to more people who felt invisible inside their own family. And drop your city and the local time you're listening from in the comments. I love seeing where in the world this story finds you. I'm Elise, 34, and this is the story of the more than 10 years my mother called me dirty toilet scrubber. And the afternoon I made her look at the receipts. Let's go back 12 years to a backyard in Tempe, Arizona, where my father told me I had until morning to leave his house. My family is not from money. My father, Hank Carter, built kitchens and bathrooms for people who had a little more than us. He was 62 now, but back then he was 50, sunburned, proud, the kind of man who measured his worth by the toolbox in his truck. My mother, Amanda, taught second grade at Tempe Elementary for 31 years. She believed in 2 careers for women, teacher and nurse, and she believed in them the way some people believe in saints. My brother Brett was 13. He liked Minecraft and ate cereal for dinner 3 nights a week. He was the easiest kid in the house because nobody expected anything from him. They expected things from me. I had graduated from ASU that spring with a degree in business administration. My mother had already picked out the elementary school where she wanted me to substitute teach. She'd told the principal. She'd told her sister. She'd told her hairdresser. She had not told me. What I had done, quietly, between graduation and the 4th of July, was enroll in a 6-month commercial cleaning and small business program. One part was an IICRC, commercial carpet maintenance technician course. The rest was field training, safety procedures, bidding, and bookkeeping. I'd been working night shifts cleaning the ASU dormitories during my senior year, and I had liked it. I had liked the silence. I had liked watching a filthy room become clean in 40 minutes. I had liked that nobody asked me where my parents were from or what my major was. I had liked that the work paid promptly at the end of each shift. I told my parents on a Saturday night, over my mother's chicken thighs on the back patio, "I'm not going to substitute teach, Mom." "What are you going to do?" "I'm starting a cleaning company." My mother put her fork down so slowly that I heard the porcelain. She looked at my father. My father was still chewing. "A what?" she said. "A commercial cleaning company. I've already enrolled in the program. I have 2 motels that said they'd give me a shot." "You're going to scrub toilets," she said. For now, yes. She laughed once. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh she used when a parent at the school tried to argue about a report card. "You went to college so you could scrub toilets. I went to college so I could choose what I wanted to do. My father put his fork down then, too. He hadn't said a word since the chicken came out. He looked at me the way he looked at a wall he didn't trust to hold weight. "This isn't going to happen under my roof," he said. "Dad, you have until tomorrow morning. I'll help you carry the boxes if you don't have a ride." My mother did not look up. Brett was inside, playing his game, and he didn't hear any of it. By the time he came out for ice cream, I was already upstairs zipping a suitcase. I made 2 trips down the driveway, with my whole life packed into mismatched luggage. My mother stood at the kitchen window the entire time. She didn't open the door. She didn't tell me to wait. She watched me load a friend's Honda Civic and watched the friend pull away. That was the last night I slept in their house as a daughter. The next time I walked back through that front door, I would own it. I moved in with a girl I'd taken a single management class with. Her name was Rosalind, and she rented a 3-bedroom apartment in West Phoenix with 3 other women. I took the closet she'd been using for storage. I paid $280 a month and slept on a twin mattress on the floor. I worked 4 motels a night, 2 on the I-10 West, 2 on East Apache, and slept from 8 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. The first month, I made $2,100. The second month, $2,400. The third month, I had saved enough to buy the course manuals outright and pay the first installment of the program. The general manager at one of the motels was a man named Carl Bennett. He was in his 50s, balding, kind in a tired way. He'd flip through my receipts on Friday nights when I came to collect my cash, and he'd say, "You're an ASU grad, and you're cleaning my toilets." "Yes, sir." "Why?" "Because in 10 years, I'm going to own a building taller than yours, and I want to know what it took to keep mine clean." He laughed, but he wrote my name down in a little black notebook he kept in the drawer next to his cash register. Years later, he told me he showed that page to his wife the night he retired. He said, "Remember the kid I told you about? I didn't have a name for the company yet. I didn't have a logo. I had a notebook, a beat-up Honda I'd bought used for $1,900, and a feeling in my chest that I was building something my mother could not see because she had already decided what shape my life was supposed to have." Thanksgiving that year was an experiment in how invisible a person can be at her own family's table. My mother seated me with the cousins' children, 3 boys under 9 and 1 girl who was 12 and bored. She'd put out the green tablecloth for the adults. She'd put out a Halloween-themed plastic runner for us. I cut my turkey next to a kid who was trying to feed his peas to the dog. She set it before the second pour of wine. She leaned over to my Aunt Patricia and said in a voice that was meant to carry, "Elise hasn't found a real job yet. She's cleaning motel bathrooms. We're praying about it." I put my fork down. I stood up. I said, "Excuse me." I walked out the front door and drove home before the pie. My mother didn't call to ask why I'd left. She told the cousins I had a stomach bug. In Christmas of 2015, I bought my mother a new vacuum cleaner. Her old one had been dying for 3 years, and she'd been complaining about it on every phone call. I bought her a Dyson, the upright with the swivel head, $399. On sale. I wrapped it in silver paper. I drove it to Tempe with a boo on the handle. She opened it in front of my father, my brother, my Aunt Patricia, and Patricia's husband, Earl. She lifted it out of the box and held it up. "Well," she said, "right tool for the right girl." Patricia laughed. Earl looked at his shoes. My father stared at the wall. I stood up. I lifted the vacuum out of her hands. I said, "Merry Christmas, Mom," and I carried it back to my car. I drove home, I plugged it in next to my futon, and used it to clean my own apartment. That was the last time I bought her a gift. 2 weeks after I drove home with the vacuum, my mother called me at 6 in the morning. She put me on speakerphone. I could hear 3 other women in the background, her teacher friends from the school, the ones she met on Saturdays for biscuits and prayer at the diner on Mill Avenue. She said, "Elise, the girls want to know, is it true you've been cleaning the Best Western on University? They drove past and they thought they saw your car." "Mom, I'm in bed. Just answer the question, sweetheart." One of the women laughed, the kind of laugh that has a dare in it. "Yes," I said. "I clean the Best Western on University, and the Comfort Suites on Apache, and the Days Inn on Broadway." There was a pause. Then the woman who had laughed said, "Amanda, sweetie, I'm so sorry. I told you not to bring it up." My mother said, "Oh, I'm not embarrassed. We just like our girl to be honest about what she's doing with her degree." I sat up in bed in the dark. I said, "Mom, take me off speakerphone." She did not. She said, "Why? We're all family." I hung up. I lay back down. I did not sleep again until 10 in the morning. I did not call her back for a month. When I did, she opened with, "I was about to call you. Aunt Helen needs her grout cleaned." January 2016 was when Brightline became real. I sat at a corner table at a Dutch Brouwer's in Phoenix with my laptop and a printout of the Arizona LLC formation guide. I named the company Brightline Commercial Services. I chose the name because every motel manager I'd ever worked for had told me the same thing. Just give me a bright line between what's mine and what's the cleaner's. Don't move my stuff, just clean what you're told to clean. And tell me when you're done. I filed the paperwork that afternoon. The state charged me $50. I drove to the Ford dealership on Camelback the next week and put $3,600 down on a used transit van. I bought 2 carry cases of equipment from a restaurant supply store. I hired a part-time helper named Carla, who worked at the same motels I did. She was 41. She had a son with autism. She wanted out of hourly motel work. My first contract was the Mesa Motor Lodge on Main Street. They paid me $1,200 a month for full overnight service. I signed the contract in pen, sitting at the same desk where I had once taken receipts as a graveyard cleaner. I drove back to my apartment that night with the contract folded in my back pocket. I did not call my parents. I did not post it. I sat on the floor of my closet bedroom and ate a peanut butter sandwich and stared at the contract until my roommate Rosalind came in and asked if I was all right. I said, "I'm fine, I just bought a company." By the spring of 2017, Brightline had 8 motels and 2 strip mall medical offices. I had hired a 3rd employee, then a 4th. I had upgraded to a 2nd van. I had moved out of Rosalind's apartment into my own 1-bedroom in Central Phoenix. I had stopped sleeping during the daytime. My mother called me on a Wednesday in March. She wanted me to clean my Aunt Helen's house for free. Aunt Helen had had hip surgery. My mother said it the way mothers say things, as an assumption, not a request. You do this for a living now, Elise. Just go over there. It would mean so much to her. Mom, I have 11 employees. Then send one of them. I can't send an employee to clean for free. They get paid by the hour. You can't even spare a couple hours for your aunt? I have a business to run. I'm not a maid you can hand out as a gift. The line went dead. She had hung up on me. She did not call me back for 43 days. When she finally did, it was to ask whether I was bringing a date to my cousin's wedding. Easter of that same year was the last time my mother actively tried to use me as a service. She called me on a Tuesday and asked if I would come to Tempe for the Sunday dinner. She said she missed me. She said my father missed me. She said she had something important to say. I drove up that Sunday. I wore a clean blue blouse and the only pair of slacks I owned that did not have bleach stains. I brought a pecan pie from a bakery on Indian School Road. My mother greeted me at the door with both hands on my shoulders. She looked me in the eye for the first time in a year. "No, sweetheart," she said. "I want you to meet someone." There was a man on the back patio whose name I do not remember, except that it was something like Howard. He was a realtor. He had bought a fixer in Ahwatukee that needed a deep clean before he could list it. My mother had told him I would do it, for free, as a favor to him because he was her friend, and as a favor to her because I was her daughter, and that was the kind of girl she had raised. I drank one glass of water on the patio. I shook the realtor's hand. I said, "It was nice meeting you," and I drove home before they finished the salad. I left the pecan pie on the kitchen counter. I did not see my mother again until Thanksgiving. She did not apologize. She told my Aunt Patricia I had been moody since the divorce, except I had never been married. The fall of 2017 was the first time I sensed something was wrong at my father's house. My old neighbor, Mrs. Sutter, ran into me at the Walgreens on Mill Avenue. She squeezed my arm and said, "Honey, your dad's having a rough year. The bank's been over twice." "What bank?" "I don't know, sweetheart. I just heard it through Susan." I called my father that night. He told me everything was fine. He told me it was a cash flow gap, that he was waiting on 2 big payments from a developer in Mesa. He told me not to worry. He told me not to tell my mother that I had asked. I hung up. I sat at my kitchen counter for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and I started a folder. I named it Carter Oversight. I added a spreadsheet. I added columns for property tax payments, utility shutoffs, lien filings, and any public record that touched my father's name or our family address. I set up alerts at the Maricopa County Recorder's Office. I told myself it was for my own protection, that if my father lost the house, I needed to know before the rest of the family did, so I could decide whether to step in. I told myself I would never need that folder. 2 months later, I opened it every morning before coffee. The notice of trustee's sale was recorded in late January of 2018. I saw it the same day it was filed. The auction was scheduled for May 9th on the steps of the Maricopa County Courthouse. The opening bid was $280,000. The original mortgage on the house had ballooned twice. My father had taken a second line of credit against it to keep his business afloat. He had told my mother none of it. I drove to Tempe that afternoon. I parked across the street from the house I had grown up in. I sat in the car for 40 minutes. I watched my mother carry groceries in from her car. I watched my father come home in his work truck and unload a bandsaw onto the driveway. They had no idea. I called my attorney that evening. Her name was Maxine Reyes. She had set up Brightline for me in 2016, and she had structured every contract I had ever signed. She picked up on the second ring. "I want to buy my parents' house," I said, "at auction through an LLC. They cannot know it's me. Ever." There was a pause on her end. I heard her pen click. "Okay," she said, "tell me everything." I told her everything. She listened without interrupting for 19 minutes. Then she said, "I can set it up by the end of next week. But Elise, are you sure you want to do this and never tell them?" "I'm sure." "Why?" "Because if they ever find out, my mother will spend the rest of my life telling people her daughter took her house." Maxine was quiet for a long moment. "Then we'll build it so they never find out." May 9th, 2018 was a Wednesday. The auction was at 10 o'clock in the morning. Maxine and I sat in the back row of the courthouse steps in folding chairs that the trustee company had set up. There were 11 other bidders, mostly small investors in cargo shorts. The opening bid on my parents' house came up 6th on the list. I won at $312,000 even. The auctioneer hit his clipboard with a pen. He said, "Brightline Holdings, LLC, 312, sold." I felt nothing. I had thought I would feel something. I felt nothing. The bid was not money I had sitting in a savings account. Maxine had arranged a short-term bridge loan in Brightline Holdings, name secured by the contracts Brightline Commercial already had and by my personal guarantee. I put every dollar I had saved into the deposit. For the next 2 years, I paid that note down before I let myself take anything close to a normal salary. We drove back to Maxine's office and wired the sale funds to the trustee. 6 business days later, the trustee's deed upon sale was recorded with Maricopa County, naming Brightline Holdings, LLC, a separate property company I owned, as owner of record of 4421 East Loma Vista Street, Tempe, Arizona. Before the sale notice became a crisis inside the house, Maxine formed Tempe Community Housing, LLC, a separate entity to administer a hardship lease without putting my name in front of my parents before I was ready. It was not a charity, and it never claimed to be one. The lease ran month to month at $1 with a 90-day termination clause. Each summer, Maxine sent a 1-page acknowledgement addendum. My father signed every one without reading the owner line above his signature. Brightline Holdings remained the owner of record. Tempe Community Housing handled the mail. The letter described short-term hardship housing. My mother supplied the miracle story herself. I dropped the letter in the mail myself on the way home. My mother called my Aunt Patricia 3 days later, weeping. She said God had sent a miracle through some local housing program that nobody had ever heard of. She said the house had been saved at the last second. She said it was proof that the Carter family was still under the Lord's eye. She moved my father's tools back into the garage. They never had to leave. I drove past the house on a Saturday in June. My mother was on the front porch in her gardening gloves, planting petunias in the bed she had planted petunias in every June of my life. My father was on the driveway, kneeling next to his bandsaw. They were laughing about something. I could see his shoulders shaking. I did not get out of the car. I drove home. I did not cry on the way. That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of cold water and watched the lights of Central Phoenix. I told myself I had done the only thing a person could do. I told myself this was over. I told myself I had bought my mother peace, and my father his garage, and my brother a house to come home to for Christmas. I told myself I would never need to mention it. I believed that for almost 8 years. That fall, Brightline signed its first regional Comfort Inn portfolio in the Phoenix Metro. It was not glamorous. It was a contract for overnight turnover work at 11 properties, and it nearly broke us before it made us. But it was the first time a national hotel brand trusted my company with more than one building. And Brightline grew fast between 2019 and 2022. In the summer of 2020, we crossed $5 million in annual revenue and opened a small Tucson office above a printing shop. That was the first time I had a desk with my own name on the door. By the end of 2022, Brightline had 94 employees, a Phoenix warehouse, the Tucson office, an in-house HR director, and a controller who had previously worked at a Fortune 500 hospitality group. We were no longer a one-van operation, but we were still building toward the company Brightline would become. My family knew none of this. They knew I had vans. They knew I had something called the cleaning business. They thought I had 4 or 5 employees and a beat-up garage somewhere in Mesa. In December 2022, my mother brought a new friend to Christmas dinner, a woman she had met at the senior fitness class at the rec center. The woman's name was Ginger. Ginger had asked, kindly, what each of the children did for a living. My mother turned to me. She said, "And this is Elise. She's still cleaning toilets." I watched Ginger's face do the small flinch of a stranger who has just realized she has stepped into a long-running argument. I watched my father look down at his plate. I watched my brother, 21 by then, working at Intel, stir his mashed potatoes. I waited until dessert. Then I excused myself politely. I drove home. I did not come back the next Christmas. I did not come back the Christmas after that. That same fall, I made a hiring decision I had not planned to make and could not have explained to anyone outside the company. We needed a new regional account manager for the Tucson market. The candidate who walked in for the second round interview was a 26-year-old woman named Joelle, who had grown up 2 streets over from us in Tempe, and whose mother had taught 3rd grade, alongside my mother, for 15 years. I had not seen Joelle since she was a teenager. She did not know who I was, exactly, until she sat down in my office and read my name on the placard. She blinked twice. She said, "Elise. From the Carter family on Loma Vista." "Yes." "My mom thinks you're a maid." "I know. She got the job." She did not tell her mother. I did not ask her to keep it quiet. She just did. The way grown daughters quietly know when not to give their mothers the satisfaction of a story. She was the best hire I made that year. Within 18 months, she was managing $4.2 million of Tucson hotel contracts, and we had hired 3 of her college friends. I never mentioned Joelle to my mother. My mother never knew that the daughter of her own teaching partner had taken a 6-figure salary at my company. It would have killed her. I would not have done it on purpose. But I am also no longer the kind of woman who deletes a hire just to spare a mother's pride. In April of 2023, Forbes included Brightline in its next 1,000 list. A reporter spent 2 days following me around Phoenix. The profile ran with a photograph of me standing in front of the very first Ford Transit van I had ever bought, parked outside our downtown office. The caption said, "Carter, 31, has grown Brightline from a single van operation into a fast-growing commercial cleaning company serving regional hotel properties and a Tucson hospital system." I posted it to my Instagram. I tagged Brightline. I tagged Forbes. I tagged my brother because I knew he would be proud of me. Brett commented immediately, "Proud of you, sis. Always have been." 63 people liked the post. Family friends I had not seen in years left congratulations. The principal of Tempe Elementary commented, "Amanda, you must be over the moon." My mother left a comment 3 minutes later. It said, "Don't make a fuss about the toilet scrubbing business, Elise. Embarrassing for the family." She deleted it within the hour, but I had already screenshot it. I have the screenshot still. The timestamp says 8:52 p.m. If you have a mother who has ever made you feel small in public for being too big, leave one word in the comments. Just one. The word that describes what that does to you. I read everyone. I'll be reading them all week. And if you've made it this far, please subscribe. There are more chapters of this story you're going to want to hear, and YouTube only sends them to you if you're subscribed. That December, I sat in my car in the cold after a family holiday dinner held at a cheesecake factory in Tempe, and I cried for the last time over her. I'd been seated at the far end of the table between two cousins I hadn't seen since high school. My mother had introduced me to the waitress as the one in the cleaning business. She'd said it twice. I had smiled both times. I sat in my car in the parking lot. I let myself shake. I let myself say out loud, "She is never going to ask. She is never going to ask." Then I drove home. I deleted my mother's number from my favorites. I did not block it, I just moved it. I would talk to her again. I would see her again. I would sit across from her at Thanksgiving the next year. But I had stopped expecting anything from her, and the stopping felt like a door closing in a quiet hallway. Between 2023 and 2025, Brightline added 2 more warehouses, expanded into southern Nevada and West Texas, signed regional portfolios with 4 major hotel brands, and passed 200 employees. By November of 2025, our lender valued the company at $28.4 million, including goodwill. In December 2025, my brother Brett came to my office for the first time. His laptop had died. He worked at Intel in Chandler, and he had a project due, and his usual repair guy was on vacation, and I had offered 6 months earlier to let him use one of our spare workstations anytime. He came up on the elevator. The receptionist greeted him by name because he was on the after-hours list. The receptionist walked him to my corner office. On the way, he passed the open break room, the wall of company photos, the framed Forbes Next 1000 feature, the case of regional awards we had won, the conference room with the Brightline logo etched into the glass door, and the bullpen of 48 account managers on the phone with hotel chain procurement officers. He stood in the doorway of my office. He looked at the cityscape outside my window. He looked at me. He looked at the wall of photos behind me. Every key employee, every regional manager, every executive. He said, "Elise, why does Mom keep telling people you're a maid?" I did not answer. I poured him a glass of water from the carafe on my credenza. I set it in front of him. He sat down. He said, "How big is this?" 28 million in valuation, 220 employees. We manage overnight cleaning for regional portfolios of Comfort Inn, Holiday Inn Express, Marriott Courtyard, and La Quinta properties across Arizona, Southern Nevada, and West Texas. He stared at me. He said, "Does Mom know? Mom knows what she's chosen to know." He called her that night from the parking lot of my office. I do not know what he said exactly. I know what I heard him say through the speakerphone of his car when he called me later to tell me how it had gone. He had said, "Mom, Brightline is not a toilet cleaning side gig. It is a real company with real employees, like a lot of real employees." My mother had said, in the calm voice she used when correcting a stranger, "Brett, I don't care if your sister bought herself a fancy office. She still scrubs toilets for a living, and she does it because she's stubborn." End of discussion. Then she had hung up. In February of 2026, my father's company collapsed. The alert from the Maricopa County Recorder's Office landed in my Carter Oversight folder that morning. Carter and Sins Construction LLC had $420,000 in private business debt across 9 creditors: suppliers, an equipment finance company, a merchant cash advance lender, and a bank line of credit that had come due. The bank was going to seize his trucks within 30 days. He had not told my mother. He had been making excuses about the trucks being in for service. I sat in my office for an hour. I drank a coffee I did not finish. I looked at the framed photograph on my credenza. Me at 23, holding a stack of fresh towels in a motel hallway. Dead-eyed tired. The first photo I had of myself in the work. Then I picked up the phone and I called MMV Asset Management. MMV is a Phoenix-based distressed debt firm Brightline had used to coordinate vendor workouts before. But this time I was calling as an individual. I asked the principal, a man named Greer Tipton, to contact every private creditor, negotiate confidential payoff figures, and route the releases through his firm so none of them would trace the funds back to me. I would wire the money from personal distributions I had already taken from Brightline, never from the company's operating account. He would handle the settlement documents. Greer was quiet for a moment. He said, "That's a personal use of a business relationship. I need you to understand the creditors may not take a discount, and no one can promise this stays invisible forever." "Then pay them what it takes," I said. "I want the releases clean." He said, "All right, 8 business days," assuming the lien holder's answer. The letter went to my father on the 28th of February. It said the listed private business obligations had been paid in full through a confidential settlement, and that he had a balance due of 0 on each released account. Brett called me 4 days later on a Friday afternoon. He was breathing hard. He said, "Elise, Dad fell down in the kitchen. He's okay. He was crying. He showed Mom the letter. What did Mom say? She said the Lord had remembered her tithes. She said she'd told the women at the rec center this would happen. She said it was a sign. He paused. Sis, she didn't even think of you, not for a second. I said, I know. He said, why are you still doing this? I said, because I'm not doing it for her. The first crack in the secret came in March, 3 weeks after the debt was paid. Brett was helping my father clean out an old filing cabinet in the garage, the one my father kept his receipts and tax returns in, the one he had been afraid to open for 2 years. They were emptying it because Hank had finally decided to retire and he wanted the garage back. Brett was kneeling on the concrete sorting paperwork into 3 piles: keep, shred, scan, when he found the original hardship lease from 2018. Near the bottom, above the manager line, was the owner line, Brightline Holdings, LLC. He knew Brightline. He had spent an afternoon in my office, but he did not know whether Brightline Holdings was mine or whether the name was a coincidence. He photographed the page, searched the Arizona Corporation Commission database, and found Brightline Holdings, LLC, with Maxine Reyes listed as statutory agent. He did not find my name there. He did not need to. He saw Maxine's name, saw Brightline's name, and came to the only person who could tell him whether it meant what he thought it meant. At 11:12 that night, my phone lit up with a text. Sis, I just found this. Then he called. I was in bed reading. He said, Elise, tell me right now, is the house in your name? I did not answer. He said, sis, please. I said, Brett, I love you. We'll talk in the morning. I hung up. I sat in bed for an hour with my phone face down on the comforter. Then I texted Maxine. Brett knows I'm going to tell him everything. Stand by. We met at a coffee shop in Old Town Scottsdale at 6:30 the next morning. Brett looked like he hadn't slept. I had slept 4 hours. I ordered a flat white. He ordered black coffee and a glass of water. I told him the whole thing. I told him about the auction. I told him about Tempe community housing and the $1 hardship lease. I told him about MMV asset management. I told him about February's wire transfer. I told him I had been holding the deed to our parents' house for almost 8 years. He cried. Not loud, just a wet line down his face that he wiped with the back of his thumb. He said, why didn't you tell me? Because you would have told Mom, not on purpose. You're a good brother, but she would have known within a year. Why didn't you tell her? Because for the rest of my life, she would have told the story as I gave my daughter the gift of a head start in business, and she paid me back by lording it over me. She would have rewritten it before the next Thanksgiving. He looked at me for a long time. He said, what do you want me to do? I said, nothing. Live your life. Don't lie for me. Don't lie to her. If she asks you directly, tell her to ask me. He said, she's going to ask. Then she'll ask. He said, sis, she's planning a yacht thing. For her 60th, Lake Pleasant. She's chartering a boat, she told me yesterday. I nodded. He said, are you going? I said, why don't we find out together? I picked up the check. I drove to my office. I closed my door. I called Maxine. I said, pull the file. All of it, every page. We're putting together a binder. She said, when? I said, April 25th. There was a pause on her end. She said, that's the day of the party. I said, yes, it is. For the next 3 weeks, I lived 2 lives. By day, I ran a company. I met with our new account director out of Las Vegas. I signed off on the renewal terms for the Marriott Courtyard contract. I approved year-end bonuses for the regional managers. I sat through a 2-hour board meeting on a Tuesday afternoon and never once thought about my mother. By night, in my home office in Scottsdale, I built a file. Maxine sent me the deed first, the original, certified by the Maricopa County Recorder. The chain of title showed Brightline Holdings, LLC, as owner of record since May 17, 2018. She sent me the lease, both the original I had drafted with the $1 a month rent, and 7 annual acknowledgement addenda, each signed by my father on a kitchen table in Tempe, without his ever looking at the owner line above his signature. She sent me the MMV settlement letter, 3 pages of detailed creditor payoffs totaling $420,000, every line tied back to my personal wire transfer of February 18th. She sent me a copy of the Brightline valuation report from our last lender, dated November 2025. $28.4 million, including goodwill. I added the things she did not have. I printed the Forbes Next 1000 profile from 2023 and slid it into a sleeve. I printed a screenshot of my mother's deleted comment with the timestamp visible. I printed 3 years of Brightline annual reports with my photograph on the inside back cover. I printed the original 2016 LLC formation paperwork from the Arizona Corporation Commission, the one I had signed alone at the Dutch Brothers. I bought a slim gray folder from an office supply store on Camelback. I wrote across the front in black Sharpie, in careful block letters, Carter family, please read in order. I placed the deed first, the lease second, the MMV settlement third, the valuation report fourth, the Forbes Next 1000 profile fifth, the comment screenshot sixth, the LLC paperwork last. I sealed the folder with 2 pieces of clear tape. I put it on the passenger seat of my car the morning of April 25th, and I drove north on the 17 to Lake Pleasant. My mother had not invited me. I had checked. 3 days earlier, Brett's girlfriend Lily had sent me a screenshot from the Carter family group. My mother had written, Elise, has money now and thinks she's better than us. Don't anyone invite her. Sloane was the daughter of one of my mother's oldest friends, the kind of woman Mom used to point to when she wanted to show me what a proper daughter was supposed to look like. She edited it a minute later, but Lily had already seen the notification preview and saved it. Lily had assumed I knew about the charter. When I told her I did not, she sent a long apology and offered not to go. I told her to go. I told her not to say a word. The charter had capacity for 36 guests, but only 32 names had been confirmed. Brett called the coordinator the next morning and added me as his guest. He did not tell my mother. He did not tell Lily until the boat had left the dock. I texted Brett, I'll be there at 1:15. Stay seated. Don't tip her off. He texted back 2 words, I'm ready. I wore a plain white cotton t-shirt with the Brightline logo, embroidered small over my left chest. Just the word Brightline in navy thread, the way our regional managers wore them. I wore black jeans and white sneakers. I tied my hair back. I did not wear makeup. I wanted to look exactly like what I was, a woman who runs a cleaning company. I parked at Pleasant Harbor Marina at 1:13 in the afternoon. The yacht was a 60-foot charter called the Saguaro Queen. It was tied at the long dock at the end of Slip 11. There was a folding table at the gangway with two women from a catering company called Mediterranean Buffet, checking guests in from a printed list. I walked up to the table and gave the older woman my name. She ran her pen down the final passenger manifest, found Elise Carter, guest of Brett Carter, and smiled. Of course, welcome aboard. I stepped onto the gangway at 1:22. The yacht was decorated in pastel balloons and white linen. Trays of bruschetta and crab cakes were laid out on a long table at the bow. A small jazz trio was playing in the corner. 32 people, relatives, old friends, and the people my mother collected around herself, were holding cocktails in plastic stemware. I saw my father first. He was standing by the dessert table holding a soda water. He turned and saw me, and the soda water stopped halfway to his mouth. I saw Brett next. He was sitting at a windowside bench. He met my eyes. He nodded once. Very small. My mother had her back to me. She was on the upper deck talking to her sister, Patricia. Her hair was freshly done. She was wearing a pale blue dress with a white shawl. She looked happy. I walked to the bar at the bow. I set the gray folder down on the polished wood. I waited. At 1:30 exactly, the captain pushed off the dock. The Saguaro Queen drifted slowly into open water. I heard the engines hum to a low gear. We were not coming back for 2 hours. I sat at the bar for 8 minutes before my mother saw me. I did not touch a drink. I did not check my phone. I watched the lake go by. The yacht had pulled into open water and was running parallel to the western shoreline at a slow, cruising speed. My cousin Megan came over first. She was 33, a registered dietitian in Glendale, the closest thing I had to a friend among the cousins. She sat down on the stool next to me. She looked at the folder. She looked at me. She said low, "Elise, why are you here? She made it pretty clear." I said, "I came to give Mom her birthday gift." "What's in the folder?" "Receipts." Megan looked at me for a long moment, then she said very quietly, "Good. About time." She got up. She crossed the deck back to where her own mother, my Aunt Patricia, was standing. I watched her lean down and whisper something. I saw my Aunt Patricia's face change. I saw her glass freeze halfway to her mouth. Patricia turned. She looked at me. She set her glass on the rail. She did not come over. She did not have to. She had already decided whose side she was on, and I had not even opened the folder yet. That was when my mother finally noticed the silence had a shape. She saw me from the railing of the upper deck. Her glass paused at her chin. She set it down very carefully on the rail. She walked to the steps. She came down them slowly. She crossed the lower deck to the bar. The room went quiet the way a room goes quiet when one person notices something. And then everyone notices that one person. My mother stopped 4 feet from me. She looked at the folder. She looked at me. She said in the voice she used at school board meetings, "Elise, this event isn't for people who think money makes them better than family. I'm asking you politely to get off." I said, "Mom, this isn't your yacht. You're renting it, and we're already in the middle of the lake." I heard somebody laugh. A single nervous laugh from one of the cousins. My mother's face changed. The hostess face slid off and the angry face came up underneath. She said, "Don't you dare humiliate me at my own party. You walk back to that gangway right now and you tell the caterer to call a tender." I said, "I will. I'll leave when I'm done. But I came to give you something first." I opened the folder. I lifted the first page. It was the deed. I said, "Mom, do you remember the year we almost lost the house? 2018. The year you told everyone a local housing program had stepped in. The year you told Aunt Patricia that God had personally intervened to save the Carter family from foreclosure." I held the deed up so she could see the recorder's stamp. I said, "The owner of the house is Brightline Holdings, LLC, which is me. Tempe Community Housing has only handled the lease and the mail. It is not a charity, and it never claimed to be one. I bought your house at the courthouse steps for $312,000 on May 9th, 2018, while you were planting petunias." My mother said, "That's not true." I lifted the second page. The lease with my father's signature. I said, "This is the lease. $1 a month. Dad signed the original and 7 annual acknowledgments. He never read the owner line above his signature." My father, who had not moved from the dessert table, sat down on the bench next to the cake. He did not look up. My mother said, "You are making this up. You are making this up in front of my family." I lifted the third page. The 2005 settlement letter. I said, "Dad, do you remember the letter you got in February? The confidential settlement. The one Mom said was God remembering her tithes. There was no miracle creditor. I paid every private business obligation against Carter and Sons through an asset management firm in Phoenix. On February 18th, I wired $420,000 from my personal distributions to MMV's settlement account. The creditors were paid in full. The letter you got was the release paperwork." My father started to cry, quietly, like a man who has been holding his breath for a year and has just been given permission. I heard my Aunt Patricia say, "Oh my God, Amanda, oh my God." My mother turned on her sister. She said, "Don't you start with me, Patricia." But Patricia did not stop. She walked across the deck and stood next to me. She did not say anything to me. She put her hand on the small of my back the way she used to when I was 12, and crying about something my mother had said. She left it there. She turned to my mother. She said, in a calm voice that everyone could hear, "Amanda, you lied to me for 8 years. I cried with you in 2018. I prayed with you. I bought you a Bible at the Christian bookstore, and I wrote the date that housing program saved your house in the front of it. I bought another one last month when Hank's debt was paid. I told everyone at our women's breakfast that the Lord had visited the Carter family twice." My mother said, "Aunt Patricia, please." Patricia said, "It was your daughter. It was always your daughter. And you sat in my living room and let me think it was the Lord." She squeezed the small of my back. She walked back to her seat next to her own daughter. She did not look at my mother again. The cousins watched all of this. A few of them had their phones out by now, not recording. None of them would have. But holding them the way people hold a phone when they need something to do with their hands. One cousin I had not seen since high school said quietly to her husband, "Babe, babe, are you seeing this?" I lifted the fourth page. The valuation report. Brightline, $28.4 million. I said, Brightline is a commercial cleaning company that employs 220 people. We manage regional portfolios of Comfort Inn, Holiday Inn Express, Marriott Courtyard, and La Quinta properties across Arizona, Southern Nevada, and West Texas. We have 3 regional hospital contracts. Our last lender valued us at just over $28 million. I am the founder. I am the CEO. I am the sole owner. My mother's hand was shaking on the rail of the bar. I lifted the 5th page, the Forbes Next 1000 profile. I said, Forbes included Brightline in its Next 1000 list in April of 2023. You commented on my Instagram post that night telling me to stop making a fuss about toilet scrubbing because it was embarrassing to the family. You deleted the comment within an hour. I have a screenshot. I held the screenshot up. The timestamp said 8:52 p.m. The text was visible. My mother lifted her wine glass off the bar and threw it. She did not throw it at me. She threw it at the deck. It hit the polished wood 3 feet from my sneakers and exploded into a starburst of glass and red wine. The shards went everywhere. A cousin in the second row of seats gasped and pulled her toddler back. My mother said, "You did this to humiliate me." I said, "No, Mom. You humiliated me for more than a decade, in every room I walked into, to every person you met. Today, I just brought the paperwork." She reached for the folder then, not for me, for the papers. She wanted to tear them before anyone else could read them. I saw it in her hands. I closed the folder. I held it against my chest. I did not step back. I said, "Mom, stop." She stopped. She stood 18 inches from me. Her shawl had slipped off her shoulder. Her mascara was running. She looked older than she had looked 5 minutes earlier. I reached into the folder and took out the last envelope. It was sealed. It was addressed to Hank and Amanda Carter. I held it out to my father. He stood up from the dessert bench and walked slowly across the deck. He took it from me. He opened it, standing there in front of everyone. It was not a notice to leave. It was the current hardship lease acknowledgement, the one my father had signed the previous summer. At the bottom, above his signature, was the clause allowing the owner to end the arrangement with 90 days written notice. My father read it, he folded it, he looked up at me. He said in a voice I had never heard from him in my life, "Daughter, I am so sorry." It was the first time he had ever called me daughter. I said, "Dad, I'm not sorry for paying off your debt. I'm not sorry for owning the house. I am sorry I let her say what she said for as long as I did." My mother was crying now too. She said, "Elise, you can't do this. You can't do this to me. You can't do this to me in front of..." I said, "I am not doing anything to you, Mom. Maxine will send the formal notice after this. You can sign a market rate lease. You can leave the house. You can decide whether you want to be in my life. I'll let you." She said, "I am your mother." I said, "I know. And I am the woman who has kept a roof over your head since 2018. If you've ever had to draw a line with a parent who has refused to see you for who you are, I want to say one thing to you, gently. Drawing the line is not the betrayal. The betrayal already happened. The line is just where you finally stop pretending it didn't. If this story has reached someone you know, a sister, a daughter, a friend. Please share it with them. Sometimes the only thing a person who is being made small needs is the proof that other people somewhere have walked off a yacht and not looked back. I left the upper deck 20 minutes later. Before boarding, I had arranged with the charter office for a tender pickup at the marina's designated handoff point. The captain slowed the Saguaro Queen. The crew lowered the yacht's tender, and a deckhand held the rail while I stepped down. I did not look back at the yacht. My brother stepped down behind me without a word. He had told his girlfriend Lily to ride back with our parents. He sat next to me on the tender bench and put his arm around my shoulders. And we did not speak the whole ride to shore. I drove him to his car. I drove home. I poured myself a glass of cold water. I sat on my balcony. I watched the lights of Central Phoenix come on in the dark. Over the next 3 weeks, my mother's number appeared on my phone 14 times. I did not answer any of them. On the 23rd morning after the yacht, there was a letter taped to my front door. It was 3 sentences long, in my father's pencil handwriting on the back of a receipt from the lumberyard. It said, "I know I was wrong. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to say thank you." I read it on my front step in the morning sun. I put it in the kitchen drawer where I kept my passport. The following Monday, Maxine sent my parents the formal notice through Reyes Law PLLC. The $1 hardship arrangement would end in 90 days unless they chose to sign a new 12-month lease at fair market rent. 6 weeks after the yacht, my parents moved out of the house on Loma Vista early. They chose to leave rather than wait out the notice period or pay the market rent. They rented a smaller place in Mesa, near my mother's old school. Brett helped them load the truck. I was not there. I did not need to be. The house on Loma Vista is rented now, at fair market, to a young couple who teaches at the same elementary school where my mother taught for 31 years. They have a 4-year-old and a baby on the way. They send me a card every Christmas through Maxine. I keep them on my refrigerator. Brett moved closer to me in late June. He did not move in with me. He took a 1-bedroom apartment in Old Town Scottsdale, 4 blocks from my own building. He told me on the phone that night, "I want to be able to walk to your place, that's all. I don't need anything else." He started coming over on Sunday nights with takeout and a bottle of cheap red wine. We did not always talk about the family. Sometimes we just watched basketball. Sometimes we did the New York Times crossword on his laptop with the kitchen door open. The first night he came over, he set a small framed photo on my bookshelf. It was a photo of the 2 of us as kids, taken in the backyard on Loma Vista when I was about 10 and he was about 5. He had taken it from a box in my mother's garage on the day he helped them move out. He said, "I asked her if I could have it. She said no. I took it anyway." I left the photo on the shelf. I have not moved it since. I look at it every morning when I come downstairs for coffee. Aunt Patricia called me 3 weeks after the yacht. She did not ask anything of me. She just said, "I want you to know that you have an aunt. You have always had an aunt." I am ashamed I waited so long to say it out loud. I cried after she hung up. I had not cried since the parking lot of the Cheesecake Factory in December 2023. It felt like something old finally lifting off my chest. I went back to the house one afternoon, the day before the new family moved in. I let myself in with my own key. I walked through every room. I stood for a long time in the kitchen where my mother had told me, at 22, that I was going to scrub toilets. I stood in the backyard where my father had told me to leave by morning. I did not cry. I did not feel triumph. I felt this simple, clean feeling of a room that has finally been emptied. I locked the door behind me. I drove back to Scottsdale. I did not scrub toilets to prove anything to my mother. I scrubbed toilets because that was where my work began, and because I have never been ashamed of it. What I scrubbed clean today was not a debt. It was the lie that she had been telling about me, and that I had let her tell for more than a decade. I am keeping the house. I am keeping the company. I am keeping my name. My mother can keep the rest.